you wanna bet that I can get you back inside your head before the summer ends, and spread a little love. Just for a little fun, I'll make you come back to me before the rise of every sun. Baby, it's meant to be, I know you got a man, but he don't understand. You're gonna be a heartbreaker, you're such a love taker. So just suck me in and you can toss me like a cigarette, 'cause I just wanna be a bad habit, yeah. Rhythm in our love, it's impressive, excessive. You can't make this stuff up. My chest beats, it's restless, wakes the neighbors up above. Yeah, baby, come and show me love. Baby, come and show me love, because you're gonna be a heartbreaker, you're such a love taker. So just suck me in and you can toss me like a cigarette, 'cause I just wanna be a bad habit, yeah.
Take a one-way ride, steal us away to find a place we can hide. It wouldn't take much to spear for a knife, just to give into the need and leave it all behind.
'Cause I know that you know that I know that you want me. You told me, now show me, come blow me away. 'Cause I know that you know that I know that you want me. You told me, now show me, come blow me away. You're gonna be a heartbreaker, you're such a love taker. So just suck me in and you can toss me like a cigarette, 'cause I just wanna be a bad habit, yeah. You're gonna be a heartbreaker, you're such a love taker. So just suck me in and you can toss me like a cigarette, 'cause I just wanna be a bad habit, yeah. Suck me in and you can toss me like a cigarette, 'cause I just wanna be a bad habit, yeah.
Good morning, folks. Welcome to Inside the Numbers with the People's Pundit. I'm your host, Rich Barris, the People's Pundit. In fashion today, we will continue interviewing candidates from what looks like it could be an America First populist kind of backlash. We're going to interview people that we think around the country probably would not have run if it wasn't for 2020. And people that I think the media should probably keep their eyes on. So continuing with that today, we're going to have at 11:30 David Giglio. He is running in California 16, currently occupied by Jim Costa, who has been in Congress going on forever, a Democrat. Republicans have, I would say, mounted pathetic past challenges to the man. The last loser actually lost support from the jungle to the general. I kid you not. And she spent like $2 million to do it. All right, this is something very different. All right, this guy is running, and he's running grassroots. We're going to talk to him. I think you're going to be interested to hear from him. Put your questions, locals community, peoplespundit.locals.com. peoplespundit.locals.com. Laura will be feeding me things that you want to hear from these candidates in the live chat. Put it in the live chat, and locals will drive the interview as we always do. David has raised, he put up some, we'll talk about all this when he gets on, because I want to leave the first half hour for what we have to talk about with the Wisconsin and Biden's approval ratings. But I just want to say, the fundraising from this guy impressed me. All right. And then, of course, we'll have Luis Miguel, who is running against Marco Rubio. All right. Brilliant marketing on social media. That's actually his handle, primarying Marco Rubio. All right. So look, Rubio, no doubt is a tough incumbent to beat. But once upon a time, Rubio, for those who think things can't happen in politics, Rubio once upon a time was a pipe dream against a incredibly popular then Republican governor, Charlie Crispy Christ. All right? Oh, God, you're trying to give me a heart attack. All right, so without further ado, let's move into... Look, New York, guys, we'll do that tomorrow on a Locals live stream. The New York statewide voter analysis. It kind of fits to do that anyway because YouTube audiences do not get the entire PDF voter analysis reports that we do. Only members of peoplespundit.locals.com do. I will be on Viva, sidebar with Viva tonight. Looking forward to that. That's going to be cool. I thought I'd take some time to explain Matt Brainerd's report on Wisconsin from Look Ahead America, which was previously conducted by what was called the VIP, the Voter Integrity Project, and now is under the purview of Look Ahead America. We will have Matt on Friday to discuss it in more detail. But before we do, so everybody is clear on what tranches of votes and designations are, we're going to go over that a little bit today. We're going to go over a little bit about the methodology, the ridiculous attacks on the methodology, which are beyond stupid. Some of these people, Laura, honestly, some of the things I've seen them tweet and say make me think they really are frauds. They have no clue about this industry, do they? They have no idea. Such as, how do you match voters properly? How do you verify a certain record as a certain record? You have a name, date of birth, you have addresses. The claims I've seen are absolutely ridiculous. It's the industry standard. The hell are you talking about? The only way you think that's not valid, or you've never heard of it before, is if you're a complete and total fraud and you're not really in this industry, are you? You just think you're a Twitter superstar because a corrupt media has propped you up as some kind of guru or something, and you're really just a total fraud. Because that's how voters are matched to voter records. And there are 5 degrees of confidence when you do it. First name, middle name, last name, address, date of birth. That's number 1. You got them all. Number 2, middle initial instead of middle name, etc., etc. Number 3, date of birth. Maybe you have the month, you have the day, you have the year. You're missing some, and down the line. It's incredibly accurate. As in over 99% accurate, which we will cite a study today. All right, moving on, though. Let's first tackle Joe Biden's approval ratings. As I said on Monday when Robert got tied up and I wanted to do like a quick little what are the odds, I was bringing up the ABC Ipsos poll, which showed that Biden was clearly headed in the wrong direction on every single issue, even the COVID issue, which he was sliding on, although his numbers were still strong there. But I told you this from the Public Polling Project, which you could support at Big Data Poll /Public Polling Project. If you do, and you leave a contribution, please let us know what you would like us to poll. Interesting conversation about possible Civil War questions on Locals yesterday in the live chat, which I had a great time with. And I definitely think that there's at least 2 questions I can pull out of that to see what people really think about the divide in this country and how serious it really is. But in any event, add your voice to it. If you do, even if you make it anonymous, please put it. We will read the comments. We read every single one of them. The loudest voices get on the questionnaire. That's really how it works. All right? In any event, I've been telling you, as someone who has been tracking Biden's approval rating since before most of these other pollsters, and definitely since the day he put his hand on the Bible and was inaugurated, that Joe Biden started out as a 48% president, roughly. Okay? 48 to 51, roughly where he was when he was elected. Even though we're going to talk about some of those votes probably not being legit. All right? So in any event, the bottom line is, that's where he was. He was no Barack Obama superstar in the mid-60s. I mean, that was just complete either bull, either lies from pollsters who are untrustworthy at this point and have terrible track records of predicting human behavior, let alone being able to tell you where the public sits on approval ratings. All right? Or it was just them relying on what they know to be response biases and social desirability biases because they're unethical and they have no incentive to correct these problems that they fully know exist. Or 3, they just really shouldn't be polling. There are just some people in this industry who should not be polling. And if you had Biden above 60% at any time in his presidency on his general approval rating, you should not be a pollster anymore. You should find another line of work. Because either A, you're perfectly okay with being a narrative tool, a propaganda tool, or B, you're just not good enough. And the public deserves better than you. I told you, as somebody who has accurately polled elections for I don't even know how many years now, have been tracking Biden's approval rating, this man was artificially propped up by a situation he was handed by the prior president. The narrative was that Joe Biden could do better with the coronavirus pandemic than Donald Trump. He convinced millions of people that that was true. And they gave him credit for things that were already in the works. In fact, Joe Biden inherited his target vaccination, his target number of vaccinations. He inherited that trajectory and blew it. Just like he blew the swine flu vaccination trajectory. So, I mean, it was one of these biggest myths ever that Joe Biden was going to somehow be better than Donald Trump in the pandemic. A man Barack Obama had to remove from his H1N1 task force for incompetence. It was a joke. But anyway, they set that up lovely for him. So when the vaccine rolled out, people said, great, yeah, 60% approval on COVID. What about immigration? 35. What about the economy? 42, 44. What about foreign policy? 42, 44. What about cyber attacks? 38, 40. The man had no issue on his side. None. Other than COVID. So as COVID becomes a distant memory in the minds of voters, or not a distant memory, but certainly not number one anymore, it was going to happen. It was inevitable. You do not have to be Nostradamus with some divination tool to figure this out. He was going to fall. And I told you he was already on the fall. Harris already in the 40s, and Biden was going to head there with her. Where are we now? I have been looking, and I told them I wouldn't put up some of the stuff that they sent me, but I'm looking at Rasmussen's tracking all week long. And today was just the day. Today was just the day, but they had just asked too. They said, we don't know what's going on here. Let me see if there's any sinking on his handling of the coronavirus pandemic. What's happening? What's happening is, it's not that there's that much sinking with coronavirus. There is. It's that all of these other issues are catching up with him, and that coronavirus is falling to the wayside a bit. All right. So the bottom line is here. I told him I wouldn't put this up, but I have it on my phone. I'm going to read it to you because it's important. Mm-hmm. This is for Wednesday, today. This is the overnight. Are you ready? Strongly approve was 26%. That's it. Strongly disapprove has shot up to 42%. The Republican strongly approval rating is now at just 9. Dems is at 51. And if you look, there is real overlap here with Rasmussen's polling. I think we caught the tip of this. I think we did. And now we're starting to see it bear out. If you look at the unaffiliated, which everyone asks this a little bit differently, Ipsos is going to say independent other. That's a little bit different because that doesn't necessarily mean you're unaffiliated. You could be a third party, not identify, which is why we like to say Republican, Democrat, independent, unaffiliated, whatever, or something else. And then typically when we report the results, we're not, we do a regrouping variable and we say independent, other, third party, something else, whatever it may be. But we like to look at, because that third party vote was supposedly so important to Joe Biden. The fact that we saw him go underwater so badly last month with that group was an indicator that the rest of the independent, unaffiliated vote is probably going to start to swing that way as well. And indeed, in Rasmussen, total approve among the other group is only 39%. That's bad. That's bad. Total disapprove is 57. Understand Joe Biden is not Donald Trump. With this ginormous wave of enthusiasm of people who, no matter what, will use their sheer intensity and passion to overtake those who disapprove. He doesn't have that well. He just doesn't. Obama did. Donald Trump did. Joe Biden does not. So this is a big deal. And I told you this was coming. This was absolutely going to come. No matter what. And the White House knew it. The White House knew the public polls were garbage and inflated. They knew it. All right, headline. It's 11:15. We're moving so quick already, and I have to have David on at 11:30. Let's break down what Look Ahead America is saying in Wisconsin, okay? The headline, which we're not going to just focus on here, the headline here is that we're looking at least 157,000 plus ballots that Look Ahead America is saying were cast illegally. Ironically, I want to break down each tranche of vote that they're looking at because we had the same problem with several of these tranches, and I'm going to tell you why. Tranche 1. And by the way, just for a locals question, I meant total as in like, no, this is not just indefinitely confined. For what you were saying about subsampling, indeed, all of these reports are going to be done like that, and I'll tell you why more in detail in a second, but the inability for people like us to get the government, these state governments particularly, look, they're not just Democratic governments. Republicans, Steve Ducey was no help in Arizona, folks. All right? Brian Kemp was no help in Georgia. In fact, they were a hindrance, which we ran into in Georgia. Tranche 5 through 7, same problem. We had thousands and thousands on a suspected sheet, which was just pertaining to people who supposedly showed up to vote on Election Day. But the Secretary of State would not give us the records necessary to confirm these. And we can clearly see Matt's group has run into the same problem here. So when he says at least, he means at least. These are conservative estimates. And extrapolating based on a subsample is valid. It is. You don't get wild variations. You just don't. Especially if it's done, well, he's doing this wholly random. And some of what we did, we wanted to look at different areas, randomly, individual subsets. Republicans, when they scream about voter fraud and stuff, they tend to just like want to focus on Milwaukee, right? Dane County. What we found was not simply an urban issue. And I think you're going to see that's probably, if you were to, go through his records individually, you're going to see that as well. I'm telling you, of course it's disproportionate in these areas. There are more people there. But anywhere that can be exploited is going to be exploited. That's human nature. All right. Tranche 1. Early and absentee ballots cast in the name of voters, EABCINV, registered illegally. All right. So what they're saying is generally what you were talking about. Do these people who have these absentee ballots, 2 months we discussed this, being registered to vote is not the same thing as being eligible to vote. So if you have all of these ballots going out, solicited, unsolicited, this giant pool of absentee ballots out there, it doesn't mean they're going to be sent to people who are still legally eligible to vote. Sadly, in the United States of America, there's a difference between being registered and being eligible. Tranche 2. Voters illegally claiming indefinite confined status as a reason to vote absentee. Understand that Wisconsin did not allow COVID-19 as a valid excuse to claim indefinitely confined status. In fact, on social media, there was widespread coverage, especially locally, of certain election officials fraudulently claiming that that was true. And they needed a court to grab a ruler and spank them in their behind and tell them that that is not true. But yet they still pushed people to do that. What's important about this is, and I got to try to summarize this stuff, Laura. Maybe we can revisit it in the last half hour. It doesn't matter if that state representative's wife would have voted anyway. So it's not an illegal vote. It is an illegal vote. She was not eligible to claim indefinitely confined. She should have got up and voted. The reason why indefinitely confined mattered so much in Wisconsin is because this is a rare exception to the signature verification procedure. We have never seen this many ballots who claimed indefinitely confined status. Couple thousand? Sure. 170,000? No. Never. And again, COVID was not a valid excuse to do so. All right. The EABCINV, God bless you, which is the very first tranche, early and absentee ballots cast in the names of voters who registered illegally. This is tranche 3. Them matched to permanent out-of-state moves in the National Change of Address database. Here we go with fake PolitiFact. Pay attention, fake PolitiFact who smeared me. You have to twist what I say to smear me, you fake fact checkers. At the time we processed this match in mid-November, the database contained records as far back as 4 years prior to as recent as October 1st, 2020. That is pretty close to the way it was for us going into it. Our voter file is already scrubbed against the National Change of Address database. All right. So what the group is saying they did here is go out and independently get that information. When we go to our database, which I'm not going to name them because, God, I don't want them to take flack. Yeah, no. When we go to our database, they do that for us 2 weeks, 4 weeks. It's updated. And that is why I told you before the elections, it's worse than this. Understand these are conservative numbers. You should understand that right off the jump. These estimates are conservative estimates because the system is always behind. Always. And I'm not going to go over it again. But when you move, what do you do, folks? You know the drill by now. You get the U-Haul truck, you get the movers in, you do this, you do that, you do that. The last thing you do is call the Secretary of State or the Secretary of Elections or the county registrar and say, I no longer live in the state of Wisconsin. I no longer live in the state of Arizona. I no longer live in the state of Florida. Please remove me from the voter roll. You don't do that. You definitely don't. Eventually, though, you may put in a change of address request. Forward the mail, please, to this request, to this address. That will cause a flag on your voter file. The state doesn't pay attention. And when you send out absentee ballots, unsolicited absentee ballots, which is why the solicitation clause was like an inherent check on the system itself. Because you won't be there to solicit your ballot. So it just won't go out. If you send them out and it's unsolicited and the state just decides, you know what, we're just going to go ahead and send everybody's out. You're sending out hundreds of thousands in most states, if not in big states, millions of records that simply don't exist. They're not legitimate legal records anymore. That's the sad thing about every attempt to clean up the voter rolls getting squashed as some racist attempt to suppress minorities. That's ridiculous. That's what corrupt people say who want these records on the voter rolls still so they can fill them in before Election Day. Which is what we saw. Months and months and months they were at this. 2 months in some states. As Matt said, I just want to know, and we'll never have this answer, who did this? Who did this? Because people getting phone calls, excuse me, you now live in the state of Arizona, yet you have a record from Wisconsin. It says on October 4th, you requested your absentee ballot and then resubmitted it on the 17th, whatever it may be. Did you do this? Absolutely not. Are they lying? Are they lying? Or did somebody know they had a change of address flag and they decided it was low-hanging fruit? Tranche 4. Going back to those same group of voters, early and absentee ballots who were registered illegally, matched out of state subsequent registrations, SSR, all right, using our national voter database. NVD. In these cases, the voters had registered in Wisconsin and matched to voters subsequently registered in another state. These are dual registrations. There's not really a change of address flag on them. They found them to be registered in multiple states. Election day, listen, here's why this matters, starting with Tranche 5. We had the problem being able to verify these records as well because they just wouldn't give it to us. The most known, I would say, because we did a show on it, is Crappy Burger in Georgia. Election day ballots cast in the names of voters registered illegally. We just could not get the records to say, we know these people are registered illegally. Now we want to know if they showed up on election day to vote. We already made sure maybe somebody voted by absentee and we found them and we caught them. Or didn't catch them, but we were able to say, look, this person should not be a vote. They didn't care. They didn't do anything about it. But then there were those, and there were thousands of them, who we at least had a high degree of suspicion could have supposedly walked in on election day, according to, and been recorded as an election day voter. But we could not get those. So like Look Ahead America is saying here, they couldn't get them either. Due to limitations of time, budget, and the ability to access necessary government databases. The VIP, the Voter Integrity Project, could only analyze the first 4 of 7 tranches. Same thing. In most cases, most states, absolutely, same problem we ran into. Again, with that very early and absentee, this is tranche 6, early and absentee ballots cast in the names of voters matched to the NCOA, the National Change of Address Database, and were voters who were in the out-of-state subsequent registrations. So these are people that were both caught up, swept up in the change of address flags, plus found to be dual registered in other states. And then Tranche 7, unmatched invalid residencies among those, the very first early and absentee ballots cast in the names of voters, and those who were also claiming indefinitely confined status. All right, so invalid residencies. What does he mean by that? The post office, Laura, in Georgia, that we discussed. We know damn well it's not a Dropbox address. We know damn well you don't live at the UPS. Yeah. You don't live at the parking lot. And when we say parking lot, we mean pay to park. That was one. Pay to park. You live at the parking lot? You're paying.
Or several families
you can pay,
live in the P.O. box.
Or several families live
Different
at the P.O. box,
families.
different families. Stuff like that. I mean, this stuff does happen. I mean, people think that it doesn't. The question in 2020 was never, folks, whether or not there were problems with voting. There is always problems with voting. In every election, there is a problem with voting. In every election, there is some degree of incompetence and or fraud. In 2016, Jill Stein wanted an audit in Michigan. Hillary Clinton said, damn right I do too, although I'm not going to put my name on it. I'm just going to say I support it. But don't stand in Jill Stein's way because we want to find those Putin votes out in Michigan. Must be up. Must be in the Upper Peninsula. But that's not where the audit started to find problems. The audit started to find problems in Michigan, in Detroit, in Wayne County, which promptly caused Hillary Clinton to remove herself from that effort. And they pressured Jill Stein to shut it down. What was the problem there? More recorded votes that were physically able to find. Donald Trump's margin increased by a couple hundred votes when they first found it. That was tallied to the official number. And then they cut it off. So God knows there is always a problem. The question is always whether or not it really impacts the margin of victory. And we'll come back to this towards the end of the show and go over this some more in detail. I want to bring on our guest in a second here. But the bottom line is, folks, that the Look Ahead America report is saying yes. Yes, there is enough that the definitive valid winner of Wisconsin cannot be determined. And people always say, well, what do you mean by that? Because every single vote is for oh, hold on, I pulled David on without him knowing. Now he's talking. We don't know that every single vote is for one candidate or another candidate. They don't know that. So the bottom line is, we would have to have the government go through it all and say, yep, this is it. This is it. This is for Joe Biden. This one was for Donald Trump. And that way is the only way we would know 100% for sure that it is indeed the margin of victory.
Could you just
all right.
do me a favor, scooch to the left?
Yeah, I'll scooch to the left in a second. Let me just give my man a quick intro here. All right, so listen, folks, I'm about to bring on the candidate, the Republican candidate in California's 16th Congressional District. David Giglio is running a grassroots campaign, and I'm going to bring you on right now, David, but while I introduce you. All right, he is running a grassroots campaign. He is absolutely not supported, I'll tell you right now, by, I would say the wing that you probably don't like. I'm sure they would like to back some other candidates, but he's done an incredible job beating the pavement, speaking to people on the ground. And I would like to talk about some issues, local issues that he has been talking about. I'm stunned by the Fox report, water issues, and full disclosure, I've pulled California 16, just so everybody knows that. All right, David, we gotta make that known right away. Welcome to Inside the Numbers. Yeah, I can hear you okay, right? You can hear. Yeah. I can hear you okay. Welcome to Inside the Numbers, and thanks for joining us.
No problem. Thank you for having me. Excited to be on there. And I just want to say, everybody watching, I'm sure you know, but Rich and Laura, they blow me away. They do a great job. And especially with the way we've seen polling go recently, it's good to have a group of people that are doing good, honest work and giving legitimate numbers, because that's what we need out there. So we really know what we're up against and how to best attack and how to move forward.
Flattery will get you everywhere, David. Yeah. So I'll tell you right now, right off the bat, because I'm going through some things that I'm thinking I want to discuss with you for the interview. And I can't believe, and you responded to it on Twitter. And we'll get to first of all, great job on fundraising, which was very impressive. And it's not easy to do in this day and age when you're running a grassroots, I would say, I'm not going to put words in your mouth, but I would think that you would say an America First kind of, campaign. So basically it's not easy. It's no small feat. And I think you blew away people's expectations. And that's going to get people's attention. But I'm looking at this tweet, David, as you know. The problem in your area, you have water issues. For people who don't know, California 16, Jim Costa has had a lot of things roll across his desk, different projects over the years. Explain the Valley's unique issue, and then I'll talk about that report from Fox that what the government, the Democratic government in California would do to the Valley by doing this. I mean, I don't want to leave people in suspense much longer, but you know the area. Explain to people the problem you have, the water issues you have there.
Well, people, if you listen to the governor and you listen to a lot of the Democrat politicians, they talk a lot about that. They focus on the climate change aspect, and that's what they're blaming for the water. But it's actually a different story on the ground here, especially when you talk to the farmers and you really get a feel of what's going on down here. And, contrary to the narrative that they push with the climate change, we've actually had some pretty wet years. The past 2 of the last 4 years have been some of the wettest on record, but we failed to take advantage of that. There's issues with that. So the environmental wing has become much larger wing of the Democratic Party than it was in years past. And they're very resistant to new dam projects, new water storage projects. They're always throwing obstacles up in the face of, the farmers out here that want to push for those projects, like the Temperance Flat Dam, which was it would be 1.1 million gallon acres of water. That project was approved by voters in California, and it still has yet to see the light of day, and it's been pretty much shelved at this point because of environmental concerns. And what's going on here is a lot of our water gets diverted out of the valley for environmental reasons. A lot of it's getting flushed out to the sea through the Delta and through San Francisco for, to protect species of fish that in some areas are not even native to the area and some are already extinct. And our farmers are here struggling. So what people need to understand is this issue is something that's going to affect all of the United States. So this area of California is called like the fruit basket of America. 60% of America's fruits and vegetables come from this part of California. And if we continue to keep cutting off water from the farmers, farmers are having to make desperation moves right now. And you brought up what the state wants to do potentially coming up. If further cutoffs farmers are going to have to make some tough decisions about lands that they're going to have to give up and that they're going to have to fallow. And we're already seeing prices across the board in all these industries going up and up and up. And if we start cutting off our food supply prices are going to continue to rise. And this is going to hurt. The president and the Democratic leaders in Congress keep making their pitch to everybody saying, oh, nobody that makes under 400,000 is going to feel effects of taxes and this and that. But that's wrong. This is going to hurt the people at the bottom the most, because how are they going to feed their families? If food prices keep going up, they're going to have to start making decisions. Am I able to buy my kids supplies for school, or I got to get food? Can I go here? Gas is through the roof. I mean, we're paying in some places in California, it's over $5 a gallon now. So these rising prices are just going to hurt the lower level people the most. So this is an issue that is important in the Valley, and it's important for America. We need to understand that just as we've now become kind of dependent on foreign energy again, we don't want to become dependent on other governments and other nations for our food supply.
Yeah, David, I did see you got, it's locally, that's a big endorsement. So you are getting a good reception from people who are directly impacted by this. And for people who don't know what I'm talking about, David did get a pretty big endorsement the other day from Chris Craig and, don't kill me on the last one, the Wileys. And so the farmers they see this. And Sacramento, this regulation that's coming down, you already have these problems. The most incredible thing to me when we spoke to the people of California 16, the most incredible thing to me was how people did know about all these issues you're talking about, but who they didn't really know or were familiar with was their congressman. I haven't seen, it is rare to see somebody that unknown when he's been representing that area for so long. And the issues you're talking about have been neglected for a long time. These aren't really new, right?
Mm-hmm. These are decades-long issues. Jim's he's a good politician in a way in that he shows up when he needs to. He needs to show up when he needs, the photo ops and the press coverage. And he's not very outspoken on controversial issues and stuff, so he's not getting a lot of attention like some of the more outspoken members of Congress that you see on TV every day. So he's not constantly on those issues bringing people in that. So he shows up at good PR opportunities, and he comes up with some opportune times to get some big numbers that on the surface look like they're solving the water issue, but then when you dig deeper into them, it's just a number of money that's being thrown there that's actually not doing anything.
Giveaways.
Yeah. So it's interesting. And people around here, though, that's one of our toughest battles is educating people on the choice at hand here. Because, you saw some of the data, and it's not an easy job. This district on paper looks daunting, looks tough. So there's been a hesitancy to really invest in a fight in this area because a lot of people write it off. But if you talk to the people on the ground here, and something really extraordinary is happening across California, and I think, when we first spoke on the phone the first time, you mentioned a lot about this. There's a lot of opportunity for Republicans in California, but it's going to take a lot of work, and it's going to take a lot of strategic messaging and really getting out there to tap into it. People are concerned. People are upset every day. Things are getting harder and harder for. This is one of the poorest. Two of the counties in this district are some of the poorest in the state, and the water issue is only going to, if we keep hurting our farmers, it's only going to devastate that more. That is our bulk of our economy, and when the agriculture industry suffers here, it's just going to bring down the rest of the valley. So this is something people here are starting to get fed up with. They see a lot of attention being paid, obviously, to LA and San Francisco. They're the ones that are getting a lot of the water. And you see decisions, unfortunately, it appears that some of these decisions being made, like the one you talked about with the Fox report, seem to be being made to keep those people happy because that's where a lot of the voting base is. So we got to make sure that those big votes in LA and San Francisco are happy and their faucets are turned on, because Gavin Newsom's counting on them to come out and keep him in office during the recall. So a lot of our farmers and our valley people are feeling left behind, and they're kind of tired of it, and they want to show that their voices matter. So there's a huge opportunity here in this district. I think, based on what you've seen and what I've seen, this could be a district that kind of shocks the rest of the country in the coming midterms. You know, some of the data you showed is like, hey, this is interesting stuff. So there's a chance that this is a seat that, since it's been realigned this way, you know, there's realignment coming even further, but since it's looked the current way, no Republicans ever won. And I think based on the numbers we've seen, it's a little surprising that it hasn't been closer than it has been. And we plan to tap into that and really push this issue, because this could be something that shocks the rest of the country and really goes to send an emphatic message that, you know, the things going on in the country right now, that the left has failed, right? And the American people aren't buying it. So it's an important time in America. And it's an important time for us to get involved in races like this and to fight on new fronts. I think that's what the Republican Party needs to do, is really take the fight into some Democratic held areas and show that, hey, we're coming, and we're coming strong, and people that once were not in our camp are starting to turn over.
Yeah, just so people know too, I saw California 16 and put it almost in the same basket as a place like Georgia 5, where once upon a time it was a R plus 20. Things change, folks. Things change. But there still needs, you have to put work into it. So Democrats are much better at, you know, going out and reaching out to certain people, new people, when they see the demographics of an area change or they see opportunity. And they're very good at that. And David is doing something that's much different. The Republicans in the past, and I think this is fair criticism of the Republicans, David, they run the typical campaign, you know, they throw the ads up, they try to raise as much money as possible, but they're not, what they're doing, and what we saw in 16, is they're not defining who they are. People really don't know who they are. And they even when they share their worldview, which is the most, I would say, the most derelict part about it, is you can't establish relationships with TV ads. That's just not how this works. And I really do liken the potential I see in places like California 16 to another area like Georgia 5 on the reverse side. And you have all of these new constituencies. We did see Republicans do a lot better with them in 2020 in the areas where they fought for them. It's just that here we are in a district where that potential hasn't been tapped yet. And I just want people to understand that.
So that's some of the, you know, the difficulty here. You know, one of the things we're really focused on is we're saying, you know, we want to make sure that people know this is a winnable race. I mean, and that's one of the challenges of the district. You know, people are looking at it on paper and seeing what it looks like on paper and thinking, oh, that's a lost cause. But they're not really getting down into the gauge of the district. And you know, you and I talked a lot about this. This is a district, you know, while it's not a industrial or a manufacturing hub like, you know, Detroit and those places, but it's the same kind of district in a different type of way. You know, these are blue collar, old school conservative Democrats who have been voting Democrat for a long time out of habit. And these are the kind of voters that carried Trump to victory in 2016 and carried a lot of Republicans to victory in 2016. But it was done because Trump and the Republican Party made out and went with that populist message and brought them in here. So we see a lot of parallels in this district with that, and selling it to people is important. That's one of the biggest challenges because it's been neglected for so long. And actually, going back to Jim Costa, we're trying to create a clear choice between Jim and who we are. You know, there's this misconception still about Jim that he's a so-called blue dog. Because, you know, back, 12 years ago, 14, 16 years ago when he first got to Congress, he was a moderate, and he was the leader of the Blue Dog Coalition, and he's kind of run away with that because he stays so far under the radar. So people say, oh, Jim Costa, he's a moderate. What people don't understand is he's not a moderate. He votes 99% of the time with Nancy Pelosi now, and even worse, he now votes 91% of the time with the socialist wing of the party. So this is not a moderate politician anymore. And you saw from some of the data you looked at is if people understood how Jim Costa is voting based on what we've seen, some of the results, some of the data, they probably wouldn't be voting for Jim if they were educated on him. And one of the hardest parts about this is we're trying to educate voters, and obviously it's going to take money to win. We're trying to raise money. We're trying to sell people on the campaign. And so any money we get in always helps, because we believe that we have the message, and it's going to take a fight to really create that, get the word out across the district, because the local media here and stuff, they're not really going to help. They're content with the status quo. Jim's been there a while. It's a struggle to get people on board. And we're just trying to go out there and work our butts off and build relationships. Like you said, millions of dollars isn't just going to win a race if I run television ads. We're trying to do, we want money, but we also want to run it like we're broke. That's what I've been telling people. If you say, how much money you need to win? And I said, well, I'd like to have millions of dollars in the race, but I'm still going to run it like we're broke, because we need to build those connections with people, because you're trying to flip voting habits. And that's the hard part. So on paper, it looks daunting, but the numbers are there. And we really got to win this for the country. I mean, this would be a huge win for not just for California, but I think for the nation, because like I said, what goes on here in our farming community has an effect on the rest of the United States. And we need people to be more aware about that. When they see prices going up at the grocery store, if we continue on the path we're going on, it's going to hit everyone in their pocketbooks. Hardworking Americans are going to keep suffering. And they can say all they want about taxes not hitting anyone making under 400,000, but I mean, inflation's the worst tax on all, and it hurts the bottom the most, right?
Without a doubt. And just so people know, because it's a very diverse district, there's without a doubt it is possible too that we can see a boundary shift, which would hurt the likes of David, Valadao, I say his name both ways, depending on, I'm not going to cry or lose sleep if I'm mispronouncing his name. But that would chop off some of his Republican base and put it into your district, David, which would only serve to stun people even more if the race ended up, a fight. You have these incumbents. There's always a district, 2 districts, 3 districts, especially in first-term incumbent midterms. There are always these districts that just come out of nowhere. Nobody saw them coming. Every little cute prognosticator had it shaded one color or the other pretty solidly, and it just happens out of nowhere. And I'm telling you, the most disgruntled voter in that district right now is probably a working-class Mexican. And these are the people that Democrats absolutely have relied on for votes in the past, and think that they're going to win forever. And I'm telling you, without a doubt, they're the ones most angry about illegal immigration right now.
And we get that a lot talking to Mexican voters around the district. We've had a lot of them come up to us, and they're upset. I mean, a lot of them that came here legally feel like, hey, my dad came here, fought his butt off to get our family here. And, he's one of Trump's biggest supporters. They'll tell us all the time, he loves Trump, and they love Trump, and they're upset because they came here the right way. And, they feel that the Democratic Party is downplaying them and ignoring them, and they're worried about their jobs. They're saying, hey, we did this the right way. We worked our butts off, and we need people that recognize that, because this is how it should be done. This district, the way it looks now, it has been won, almost won by a Republican before. I mean, they kind of shocked the world back in 2014.
That's right.
Teixeira ran a grassroots, hard-nosed campaign. He was a Portuguese farmer, and he had this thing won. I mean, he was in Washington ready to be sworn in, and then 3 weeks later they said, oh, we found a few thousand ballots, and they called him home. So this district, there is potential here, and it's shocking that there hasn't been more attention paid on it since that win by Johnny, because Jim, he put in the work and he won it, and ever since then people have been trying to get back that, and we feel we're going to try and capture what he did and learn from him, because he ran the type of campaign that we want to run, and he was able to win it even with how it looks right now. But it's not easy, and we're trying to get support from the outside. We're trying to let people know that it's important that Republicans make inroads in places like this. Everybody thinks California is a lost cause, but I was just reading an article the other day about there's a lot of people that think California is starting to shift. There are people in California that are fed up, right? I think even some of the most ardent supporters of Democrats in the past are starting to really feel, their pocketbooks hurting. And hey, how am I going to stay here? How are my kids going to grow up here? The polls, kind of like they do with the national polls, like, do you think your kids are going to be better off than you are? I mean, you've been doing that issue, and you see how Americans are responding. Well, it's getting worse in California. It's like almost 2/3 of Californians think their kids are going to be worse off than they are. And so people are starting to wake up and I think ready for a change. It's been one party rule for so long in this state, and we see just problems mounting up and up, and all this money being spent, and nothing's getting better. And a district like this, a big farm community, it's a more conservative base. Like I said, these aren't San Francisco and LA Democrats, okay? It's completely different. A lot of people think, oh, California Democrat, that's what they think they are. These are your old school blue collar, hardworking Democrats that are just kind of still voting out of habit in some ways. So we have to use the message that Trump used to capture those people and put it on this level. And Johnny did an excellent job of that in 2014 when he basically won this thing. We have to tap into that again this time, because I think there's, based on what you've seen and what we've seen, there's a lot of potential here with that kind of message, even if the district doesn't change. We can't count on redistricting, because who knows? It takes forever. It takes forever in California. They're dragging their feet. Nobody really knows what's going on. And we think the district's winnable regardless of that. We're just looking for support from outside. We're trying to raise money. It's a battle because people look at it and say, well, the Republicans won that race. Why do I want to throw money in that race? So what our message to everyone is, this is a race. This is a district. This district could shock the United. This is the type of race, if a Republican were going to win, you would see it on election night and people would be stunned. They'd be like, how did this happen? We didn't know. Like, it would be one of those races that they would be really perplexed over. And it would really go to show that people are fed up. And they're rejecting this narrative of socialism and stuff, because the people around here aren't into that. Even the Democrats out here, these aren't socialists. If people go to church around here, people are very passionate about the Second Amendment. They're very passionate about their rights and their liberties. And this would really, this would be one of the races that would really kind of be a really big gut punch to the Democratic Party if they were to lose it, because they've never lost it officially. And they don't think, they don't work that hard here. They don't think they have to, and we're going to show them that they better work hard, because we're coming for them aggressively.
I was stunned by, you talk about what their district is made up as. Stunned by the I thought I was going to get a large percentage of self-identified liberals, progressives. That did not happen. When we flatly ask people why they have been voting the way they have been voting for years, and the percentage of people who say it really is a crisis of identity. They don't understand what Republicans stand for. They have been voting. Many of them have been voting with Democrats out of habit. They just don't understand there's another choice. They don't view the alternative as credible in prior years, because you don't get to know. Like I said, folks, the last candidate in David's district actually lost support from the jungle to the general.
Well, that was Elizabeth. Yeah, that campaign, that was two cycles ago.
She spent millions to lose votes.
It's hard.
Yeah, two cycles. Yeah,
people have different ideas on how to win this race, and and where to find the votes. And a lot of these campaigns have struggled to raise the funds because, like I said, it's been tough. People haven't given the support. The NRCC actually, this is a historic move, and this goes to show you how things are shifting around the country and how Republicans are on the offensive. The NRCC is now targeting this race. They put this on the list. They expanded their targeted seats for the 2022 midterms, and this district has never once been looked at by the Republican Party. So when it got put on there, this is a rallying cry to people around here saying, hey, this is your chance. This is our time to win this thing, and to there is life here, and we believe just ground in the pavement. You can have, like you said, you can have all the money in the world. Nobody thought Trump was going to win those voters in Michigan, Wisconsin, Pennsylvania. Yeah. And he probably wouldn't have won them if he didn't go there, right?
That's right.
I remember watching I tell this all the time when I talk to people out here. I remember, like 2 days before the election in 2016, Trump throwing rallies up in Michigan. And I remember, watching Fox News and people, the pundits were like, what's this guy doing? He needs to be in Georgia rallying up his base, or he needs to be in North Carolina, because there were polls at the time showing he was going to lose North Carolina, he was going to lose, and they're like, this guy's, he's in jeopardy of losing Ohio, North Carolina, and Georgia, and here he is up in Michigan the day before the election, then he's flying to Wisconsin, and these are places he's going to lose by 10 points, and the Trump people were very adamant that, no, our polling shows we're winning. Our polling shows we've won Ohio, right? We don't have to spend time there. And people are like, what do these people know? And then the numbers came in on election night and it proved it, but how many times did you hear Republican presidential candidates say that they were going to win Pennsylvania? I remember I went to college in Scranton, Pennsylvania.
Since '88, since they lost.
I remember when John McCain ran against Barack Obama.
Yeah.
Actually, McCain came to Scranton like a week before the election, and they were adamant that they had a shot to win Pennsylvania, that they were going to win Pennsylvania. And they threw a rally in Scranton, which is Joe Biden's hometown. I mean, he only lived there for like 6 months, but he still claimed it was his hometown. But they were adamant, the McCain campaign, we're going to have victory in Pennsylvania and this. They came the last minute. They threw the rally at the school. They lost by 10 points in Pennsylvania.
Yep.
And then, Mitt Romney, they thought they were going to win Pennsylvania. They said, we have a shot here. But nobody really went and did the work like Trump did. He went to those places aggressively, and people showed up in droves. And his message is what got them on board, saying, hey, you guys have been voting for Democrats for 40 years because your union bosses say, we got to vote for Democrats because that's going to keep your job here. And what's been happening to you? You've been voting for Democrats like your union bosses said. Those union bosses have kept their jobs, but your jobs and your plants have still closed. And they said, wait a minute, you're right. This guy's right. And it's the same thing here. You've been voting for Democrats saying, we're going to protect your farms. I'm a Valley First person, I'm going to get you water because I'm a farmer. And don't worry, it's coming, it's coming, it's coming. And it hasn't come. And now we're at this situation where this, the drought, the rainfall this year hasn't been great, but we wouldn't be in such a dire situation had this issue been adequately handled in years past.
Right.
The Pundit Dam, water storage projects should have been done. They've been neglected by Democrats and Democratic politicians for too long. And that's why in a year like this, where there hasn't been a lot of rainfall, we're in such a precarious position because they're mismanaging the water as well. So, it's time for a change. People have to say, how long do you want to wait? You're at a crossroads. You have to make a choice. Do I keep trusting that they're going to eventually do it? Or do I roll the dice and say, listen, we need to make a change. There's no harm in going somebody who says he's going to, because I'm selling, Jim Costa is going to tell you he's going to get water, but we have a track record that says he's not. They're focused on that train still. I don't know if you guys know about the train. The high-speed rail that should have been done about 5 years ago was only supposed to be like $8 billion originally. Now it's only
80,
going to cost like $100
yeah.
billion now.
The ever-increasing high-speed rail, it just never ends.
That's actually not even high speed anymore. It's like going to be a regular train, and it's actually going to be a diesel train now too. So it was supposed to be like a high speed, technologically advanced train. Now it's kind of just like a regular train, and now they don't even really know where it's going. But those projects should be put on the back burner in the more pressing issue, right?
And voters said that, David. We asked them that. They said that. We said, listen, which one do you want handled first? Even if they supported the high-speed rail, even if they supported it, they still believe that it should take a back seat to something more pressing, water supply.
That's the thing, we've talked to some people and they say, well, the train's not a bad thing. Listen, the train's not a bad thing. Connecting, all of California isn't a bad thing because traffic is terrible when you drive to like LA and stuff. Sometimes it'll take me like
Horrible.
9 hours to get down to see my uncle in San Diego. The train overall isn't a bad concept, but there's more pressing issues. It's right. Yeah. It's like, that's not something that should be on the forefront right now because we have no water. I mean, what's happening now is, like you alluded to the article, they're voting in a few weeks. The California Water Board wants to basically cut off water supplies from the San Joaquin and the Sacramento Deltas watersheds to the valley. And farmers are saying, listen, if this happens, I'm going to have to make choices. Which plant, I might have to just fallow complete acres, stop growing certain crops this year because I can't, I won't have the water to do it. And that's going to hurt everyone around the country. It's going to decimate the Central Valley. and it's going to hurt people around the nation when they go to the supermarket and they see the price of their fruits and vegetables and their almonds going in through the roof. Out here, the almonds get a bad rap. Everyone says, oh, those almond farmers are using all the water, but then those same people love their almond milk, right? So when your almond milk starts to cost $15 a gallon, it's going to be your own fault. And we've never had, it's crazy because it's like you're actively working against your own food supply. And it's a really startling thing, people, these Democratic politicians, they understand how much food comes from the Central Valley. And, so why would you want to put your own food supply in jeopardy? It doesn't really make much sense other than, there's a lot of votes in LA and San Francisco, so they get a lot of precedence over it. And people in the Central Valley, when you hear Newsom talk, it's just those crazy Republicans in the central part of California that want the recall, even though it's not true because more Democrats in LA County signed the recall petitions than Republicans. So, this is a fun district. I mean, it's going to be a tough battle. We like what we're doing. We're hoping for more support from around the country. We want people to know that this is a race that's worth helping out in because, like I said, winning this seat is not just important for it's gonna be a gut check to the Democratic Party. Show, hey, you're losing your vote base. People are emphatically rejecting this far left move, and it's a wake-up call to them, and they need a wake-up call. And I think they're more emboldened. You see it. I don't know if it's more that they're more emboldened and they're really scared because they know what's coming. It's hard to say at this point.
Yeah, like they're just pushing as hard as they can while they feel they can. It's hard
to say either way.
It's hard to say.
If they're emboldened or if they think they're going to lose and they want to try and get as much done as possible. But either way, 2 years is a lot of time to lose some ground, and people have to understand what's at stake in the coming elections. I'm sure you've talked a lot. Go ahead.
Oh, I was just going to say, well, we're up on 12:01. We're up on the break. But tell people, David, we'd love to have you back to keep pace with this because I do think, this is one of these areas, one of these races where it's just like going along to get along for years. And I tell people all the time, there's always these handful of districts that come out of nowhere and shock everybody. Maybe there's a very local issue that's going on that nobody around the country's paying to, and the Cook Politico report is just counting on the D plus whatever PVI they've assigned to the district. That all goes out the window when you have movement races, hyper localized, whatever it may be. That can all go right out the window and then stun all of the politicos who never saw it coming. Tell people where they can find you though, so we gotta go to a break here. Where they can go.
It's right on the screen here, davidforthevalley.com. This is going to be a race, like you just said, this is going to be one that shocks the country. We're going to win it, and it's going to show the left that we're emphatically rejecting them. And one thing to note before we go about California, Kevin Kiley, who's in the governor's race, had an interesting statistic, you touched on this a little, 60% of Californians identify as conservative. So the state is not as far gone as people think. There is a lot of opportunity here. It just takes work. We're going to tap into it. Visit the website, davidforthevalley.com. Help us in any way you can, because on election night, we're going to send the publics. We're going to drop the pundits' jaws. Not yours though, because you'll have already seen it coming. So the ones that are putting their Biden plus 100 polls out,
that's going to happen. That's going to happen. Without a doubt. David Giglio, ladies and gentlemen, we'll be back in a couple of minutes after the break. See you soon.
See ya.
It's good.
How much you wanna bet that I can get you back inside your head before the summer ends and spread a little love. Just for a little fun, I'll make you come back to me before the rise of every sun. Baby, it's meant to be. I know you got a man, but he don't understand. You're gonna be a heartbreaker. You're such a love taker. So just suck me in and you can toss me like a cigarette. 'Cause I just wanna be a bad habit, yeah. There's rhythm in our love, it's impressive, excessive. Can't make this stuff up. My chest beats its restless, wakes the neighbors up above. Yeah, baby, come and show me love. Baby, come and show me love. Because you're gonna be a heartbreaker. You're such a love taker. So just suck me in and you can toss me like a cigarette. 'Cause I just wanna be a bad habit, yeah.
Take a one-way ride, steal us away to find a place we can hide. It wouldn't take much to spear for a knife, just to give in to the need and leave it all behind.
'Cause I know that you know that I know that you want me. You told me, now show me, come blow me away. 'Cause I know that you know that I know that you want me. You told me, now show me, come blow me away. You're gonna be a heartbreaker. You're such a love taker. So just suck me in and you can toss me like a cigarette. 'Cause I just wanna be a bad habit, yeah. You're gonna be a heartbreaker. You're such a love taker. So just suck me in and you can toss me like a cigarette. 'Cause I just wanna be a bad habit, yeah. Suck me in and you can toss me like a cigarette. 'Cause I just wanna be a bad habit, yeah.
No, don't worry, we're not going to go again for a round two. All right, welcome back to Inside the Numbers with the People's Pundit. I'm your host, Rich Barris, the People's Pundit. That was a close one there, indeed. All right, so that was David Giglio. I'm telling you, I just want to repeat this. Sometimes, not sometimes, all the time, every midterm, where there's especially a first-term incumbent midterm, the tide of history shows these swings. 20 points can be erased pretty strongly in a midterm election. There are always these districts that come out of nowhere. Kentucky 5 last time, right? Georgia 7, Georgia 5. Those are examples of when they moved against Republicans, right? We saw a couple of them in North Carolina, which were big, heavy Republican districts. Virginia 7, okay? David Bratt by 11, 12 points. It's gone, no problem. Spangelberger gets to win it by 6, even though she barely eked by this time. But 20-point swings absolutely happen, and there are these races where you can identify them around the country where they're just maybe hyper-localized. Nobody's paying attention. A very complacent incumbent. I'll tell you this before I bring on the next guest. The polling in 16, which some of it I did share when we did our own, the amount of... Nobody knows this guy. Nobody knows who the hell he is. He's been representing them for years, and we're like, how well do you know him? What's your opinion of him? What's your view of him? They're like, I don't really know the guy. When I tell you he's got like a 30% recognition, 35%, I'm not kidding. It's incredibly rare to see something like that. And quality of life has gone down for these people. And this would tease up the next guest really well. Because I say, Republicans really have to figure out who their face is going to be. Mm-hmm. So, right? Yes. So in order to really take advantage of this shift that we're seeing, especially among Hispanic working Americans, David's got to contend with that a lot. In Florida, we saw a huge shift. Our next guest is from Florida. We really are going to have to know the parameters here going forward. Mm-hmm. Is the Republican Party going to be a party of Kevin McCarthy and the good old boys club, or are they going to look like the party they claim to represent under Donald Trump? And there are some people out there that are trying to make that change happen, and they're going to meet a lot of resistance. I'm telling you right now. All right, the next guest, all right, is going up against the Titanic. Luis Miguel. Marco Rubio once started out himself as a underdog. People knew him because he was this, obviously, the House, right? He was the House leader. But he was the underdog going against a giant Charlie Crist. And he was defeated he defeated Charlie Crist in the Republican primary, went on to be the next senator from the great state of Florida. However, Marco Rubio has base problems. Mm-hmm. All right, and I'm just gonna, with that, I'm gonna go ahead and bring on the next guest who's gonna talk about those problems. I'm gonna ask, and I didn't get a chance to ask David why he ran. I'm gonna start with Miguel right now and ask him that question. First of all, Miguel, I'm about to bring you on. Thanks. Welcome to Inside the Numbers with the People's Pundit. Let's start out there. What made you say I'm gonna run against Marco Rubio?
Well, thank you first of all for having me here on the program. Look,
Anytime.
The fact is that the political establishment is corrupt and is turned against the very people it's supposed to protect. Marco Rubio is a complete representation of that. Time after time, he sponsored legislation that attacks the constitutional liberties of Americans or has failed to defend them when given the chance. From siding with Biden and certifying the election when we had evidence of electoral fraud, to sponsoring legislation that attacks the Second Amendment and would impose national red flag laws, to his stances on immigration. This isn't a time in our nation's history, considering what we're up against as far as tyranny. We can't have people like that who are completely traitors to the constituents who put them where they are. And I've seen that in my community as an organizer, as an activist, as a writer here in North Florida. We've seen just how corrupt the system is at all levels of government. And we need people who are going to fight for the regular folks like you and me when they're up there.
Luis, we have this database now of these people who have been thrown in. This is number one question. And I've been pretty hard on Representative Webster. In Florida, we have a lot of people that are sitting, the political prisoners are sitting in a D.C. jail right now being abused. Maybe not even charged, definitely not charged with anything remotely resembling an insurrection. Most of it is trespassing, nonviolent stuff like that. A lot of them come from Florida. Ocala, Central Florida is a big one. That's why I've been hard on Webster. What would your stance be on this? If you were in the U.S. Senate right now, how different would your actions be towards what's going on compared to Marco Rubio?
Well, thank you, Richard. I appreciate you asking. And so I'll just attack that on a few different fronts. First of all, where I stand on it in general, and then what I would do were I in the Senate. So first of all, my stance, and you kind of touched on it, the fact is that these men, they're not seditionists, they're not insurrectionists, the vast majority of them. If they committed any crime whatsoever, it was misdemeanor charges of trespassing. And many of them weren't even aware of the fact that they were. We've seen some evidence that many of the people who entered the Capitol on that day were in fact guided in by police, the Capitol Hill police. And they were there to protest, they were there to express their First Amendment right. So when they saw the doors open and people being guided in, they thought, well, let me go in, let me see what's going on. Let me take some pictures. And all of a sudden, they have the feds show up at their doorstep and haul them off to jail. It's a gross crime that's being committed. There's a lack and a violation of due process in all this. The fact that people are being held in jail without bail, in many cases without even knowing the charges against them, they're being mistreated in there. We've gotten reports, we've gotten letters from some of our associates or family who are in this situation, and it's gross what's happening. That the fact that being abused, deprived of medical treatment, put in these horrible conditions. And so what we need to do is we need to get them out of there. Now, it needs to be tackled at the state and at the federal level. First of all, the fact that you have feds right now who are going around and setting up offices outside of Washington, D.C. You have here in Tampa, you have an office going to be set up for the Capitol Hill Police in order to facilitate this whole process, which is nothing short of political persecution. In my book, it is preposterous. So we need legislation at the federal level immediately curtailing the jurisdiction of Capitol Hill Police and making sure that they stay where they are. They're supposed to be a security force for the Capitol, the U.S. Capitol, nothing more. And we need to stop them from coming into our states. At the state level, our state lawmakers and our governor, they need to grow something of a backbone on this issue and need to say to Washington, D.C., that all these agents, FBI and others, need to stay out, that we are not going to cooperate with them and to keep their hands off of our people.
Luis, when Donald Trump was, going after sanctuary cities, it's not even a double standard anymore. It really isn't. And I hear the frustration from people all the time in the community and on social media. This is a perfect example. When Donald Trump was trying to enforce federal law, which was already on the books, there were local politicians, Democratic politicians, who refused to cooperate with existing codified law that was on the books. And yet here Republicans just roll over for not even laws that are on the, ideas and laws and jurisdiction that is already codified, but what they want, they propose they're going to do. And we have this going on today, right now. We're continuing with this hearing that, going on. And you can see the media is trying to lionize the D.C. police. They played a clip before of some raving Trump supporter to try to demonize them. They're trying to make these people the heroes. And Republicans' initial instinct is to be afraid and not want to fight the media. They're afraid of the media, I guess, I think sometimes they're more afraid of the media than they are the Democratic Party. Trump just flatly called these people the enemy of the American people, the media. And that's what we deal with here constantly. What do you think the greatest threat is right now? Because I hear your messages coming through loud and clear on civil rights being under attack right now. I can hear that out of you so crystal clear. What do you think the biggest threat right now, whether it's domestic or foreign? What do you think the biggest threat is to America? Mr. Rubio is on the intel, side of this. He's going to tell you Vladimir Putin or something if we had him on and asked him the same question. What's your answer?
Sure. Well, let me tie that into Marco Rubio, actually, because it kind of relates.
Please do.
It's interesting seeing Marco Rubio go out, and one of the biggest talking points that he has at this very moment is Cuba. And he's often been a champion for the Cuban people and Latin American places where you have communism taking a foothold. Venezuela is another example. And, all of us are on board with that. Nobody wants to see communism dominating Latin American countries in Cuba or elsewhere. We all want the liberty of the Cuban people. But how about stopping communism right here in our own country without standing up for the rights and liberties of this nation, which he swore to protect? And so right now what we have is nothing short of a communist takeover to this nation. I'll put it simply, and people might think I'm radical for saying it, but that's exactly what it is. What we have right now is a communist regime governing this country. It's not even a legitimate government, a legitimate presidency. We have the evidence and more is coming out thanks to the audits being conducted in states like Georgia and Arizona, that this was a coup in which the participants were people in very high places, the CIA, the deep state, the Justice Department, foreign entities like Communist China. And so this is, again, a communist regime. It has all the hallmarks of it, from fraudulent elections to suppression of free speech, the imprisonment of political dissenters, the collusion with big tech in order to suppress speech. And you don't have freedom of the press again because you have big tech and other entities that keep out stories even from the alternative media. And so again, this has all the hallmarks of a communist regime. But people like Marco Rubio, who will talk all day about Cuba, won't point it out right here in our own country. So it is this communist, globalist deep state, if you want to call it that, this conglomerate of internationalists, of intelligence community, of political establishment, and open socialists working together in concert to destroy this country from the inside and from the outside. That poses the greatest threat to this republic.
Yeah, that answers that. I'll tell you, for 4 years, that's what, and we said this yesterday, for 4 years, that's what we witnessed under the former president. That was what you saw was just this constant warfare between whether someone can be elected by the people and whether the conglomerate you're talking about is willing to accept that when that happens. And really, that was the crux of of the fighting, but felt like constant crisis one after the other. Marco Rubio goes on this committee, and I think when you just pointed it out, the FBI has not behaved very well, and I'm not sure they ever did. It was probably a myth that they did. But we had so much come to light over the last 4 years. And when you talked about the problems with elections, we have emails that show, the White House sending emails, hey, look, we got allegations that this happened in the state of Pennsylvania or whatever it may be in the state of Georgia. Can you please look at it? And they were patently refusing, Luis, to look at what the White House Chief of Staff was showing them. Can you please investigate this? What is the role of the intelligence committee that Marco Rubio sits on if it's not to conduct oversight into things like these? It seems like, that is the point of these committees. Our elected representatives are supposed to oversee the unelected government, but that's not happening anymore. I mean, what, in your mind, what are the roles of these committees?
Right, exactly. And that's the thing, under the Constitution, the way it was created by the framers, Congress, not the judiciary, not even the executive branch, Congress is supposed to be the dominant branch of government. They are elected by the people. They are the lawmaking body. The only legitimate legislative body, of course, the executive and the judiciary has taken over much of that capacity unconstitutionally over the centuries. But Congress is supposed to be the driving force, and it has a lot of power that Republicans never seem to ever want to use when they're in
You're getting to my next question. Go ahead, though.
The Democrats always seem to have a handle on when they're in power, as they're doing right now. For example, take a look, in answering to your question, take a look at what Democrats are doing right now that they hold both houses. They're having this January 6th committee. They're investigating, performing investigative functions. They're subpoenaing people. They're putting people on the stand. And depending on that, they'll use that to refer people to, at least they hope to do so, criminal indictments. They would like to get some high-profile people ultimately in prison through this process. Hopefully they don't get their way. But Republicans should be doing the same thing when they hold the reins of power, when they hold Congress. So what these committees could do, like the Intelligence Committee that Senator Rubio sits on, they could also be using their investigative functions to, again, subpoena people, put people under oath to give sworn testimonies. If they're found to have lied, then, like Alger Hiss, refer them over to the feds, have them arrested and put in prison for what they're doing. And because especially right now, that the Justice Department is controlled, of course, by Biden, by the communists. So it really will become incumbent upon Republicans, should they take power back in the 2022 midterms, to start assuming a lot of these functions and roles. And Congress has the power to start clearing out the deep state, start taking out all these corrupt officials throughout the Justice Department, the FBI and otherwise, the CIA, all of it. People forget that under Article 2, Section 4 of the Constitution, the impeachment power of Congress does not apply exclusively to the president or to the vice president. It applies to, quote, the civil officers of this country. So that encompasses all the high-ranking officials in the federal government, from judges, everybody, excluding military personnel. So they could get rid of Christopher Wray. They could get rid of Fauci, tying in the COVID pandemic into all this. They could get rid of the head of the CIA. They could clear out the entire corrupt Biden administration if they wanted to. The problem is they don't have the guts to do it.
Yeah, so just so people understand what I meant by that next question, because he absolutely answered it. We have all of this slew of new candidates who I would argue, and I think I'm right to argue, are really trying to move forward with the former president's vision of what this party should be like. And you're having the old guard who was really trying the wait and see approach, and basically trying to wait out Donald Trump so they could return to business as usual. That old wing of the party does not believe in meeting fire with fire. They're go along to get along. And as long as K Street is funding their re-election campaign, they're okay. And this new group of candidates, definitely, you, Luis, Joe Kent, we had him on last week, J.D. Vance, Masters, there's definitely a connective thread here, which is you're just losing like the nice guy. And you're not willing to use constitutional authority to fight for what you believe in. It's not abusing power. Like the old guard would argue, folks, that it's them acting like Democrats and are using power. Congress has that power. When he was just talking, I mean, these were powers granted to you. So what is the point of it if you're not going to use it to defend yourself in the future? That's the message from this new group of candidates. And that's part of the that's part of the argument Republicans are going to have with each other. So I know that there is I would say Rubio's got a base problem, is where I'm pointing it out, is what I'm saying. And I think really anyone who runs against him, his job is to convince them that, hey, look, I'm over here, I'm viable, I'm an alternative. What's the response been to you, challenging somebody like a Rubio? Because as a typical politician, he's made all the right moves to try to entrench himself. You know that. You live in Florida, so I don't have to explain that to you. He's trying to make all the right friends, but the base ultimately matters, as he taught Charlie Crist in 2010. What's the response been from people in Florida?
Right. And I would say you hit the nail right on the head. If Marco Rubio has a base, it consists exclusively at this point of Washington lobbyists and the Chamber of Commerce. But the actual voters of Florida are sick and tired of Rubio. And I'm telling you, as somebody who myself has been involved in local politics for a number of years, and as somebody who's been traveling the state extensively and without ceasing over the last half year. And everywhere we go, the people of Florida are tired of Marco Rubio and want him seen brought home because of his long list of betrayals that we've talked a little bit about during this discussion. And the fact is that, like you said, he has a base problem. There's been a huge shift in the Republican Party. And a lot of people don't realize this yet, at least a lot of the elites, the highly paid observers over in DC, they haven't realized this, and that's why they don't see how vulnerable Rubio truly is as a candidate. But there's been a huge shift in the attitudes and the makeup of the Republican electorate, where people are no longer bound by the political correctness of yesteryear. They're no longer subscribing to the kind of weak-willed, surrender caucus type Republican Party politics that used to dominate in the eras of Mitch McConnell and Mitt Romney. What people now want is candidates and office holders like Trump, people who are fighters, and people who are willing to take on the important issues of the day. Everything from big tech to all this COVID tyranny, the erosion of our private rights and liberties. Of course, everything that's going on right now with January 6th, the election fraud, China, CRT, trans and LGBT propaganda in the schools, the school districts and the teachers unions. These are the things that matter to the people right now. These are the issues that people are being affected by and that they want answers from candidates and from office holders. But Rubio, like many of the old guard, have absolutely no answers to any of these questions. They've done zero about it in decades in office, and they aren't even talking about it. So that's where the disconnect comes in between the base and the incumbents, between Rubio and the people of Florida. And that is what we're going to be leveraging and fighting on in this race.
Luis, but he'll fight for his friends. I've seen it, his friends. And I'm thinking back, there are two things that really make an impression, well, three, that make an impression and always did with Marco Rubio with me. One was when he was running against Charlie Crist. He refused to meet with these grassroots groups that simply wanted him to fill out a questionnaire. And in that year, they had come together and were pooling their power as a primary voting bloc. And he really didn't realize that when he did. That's when he acted like a very typical politician. And that's when he finally decided, all right, I'll go visit these groups and I'll just fill out and answer their questions. And then secondly, we worked with a veterans group. He was not the responsive senator. Bill Nelson ended up helping us, a Democrat, folks, who's defeated now. Rick Scott is now the senator in his seat, but at the time, Democratic Senator Bill Nelson is the one who responded to us and said, we'll help you. And he did help us, and a bunch of veterans. And then the third was 2018. Rubio was dead quiet, Luis, about what happened in 2020. But and even what was happening against Ron DeSantis in 2018. But you take away his agricultural commissioner seat because of Big Sugar, and he'll flip out and accuse everybody of election fraud, which is what he did in Broward County. Stole that seat from my friend, So he'll fight like hell without widespread. And you were talking about evidence earlier in the show. It was going over Wisconsin, a report in Wisconsin. We've done this over and over and again. Marco Rubio did not have that kind of evidence when he went nuts and ballistic over the agricultural seat in 2018. So there are just these certain things that stick with you with politicians and their actions. Sometimes they're more significant, than others. Is there one thing that Marco Rubio did that just, set it off for you? Or to me, it sounds like what I'm reading out of you, this is things piling up over time, Yeah. What about with you specifically? Because it takes a lot. It's a big decision to run for office. There's always something I find that somebody says, you know what, this did it.
Right. Well, in my case, it was not only Rubio, but the situation in the country in general and in my community. With regard to Rubio, it was definitely his stance on the election. The fact that it's not only that he voted to certify the fraudulent election, but he's called out people like Marjorie Taylor Greene, who raised awareness about the fraud. He's called them conspiracy theorists. He came out and made a video actually praising the arrest of these men who are in jail unconstitutionally illegally right now. And so the betrayals are along, of course, what he's been pushing as far as red flag laws, which honestly is unfathomable for someone who has a re-election right around the corner. I can tell you the Second Amendment people in this state are not happy with him. But as far as me getting into this race, putting my hat into the ring against even someone so entrenched like Rubio, really comes back to the fight that we've been having up here in North Florida. Just to keep it brief, I was very much involved here in the community when we had a lot of Black Lives Matter and Antifa elements come into our community in St. Johns County, specifically St. Augustine. And it was just this horrible experience, but eye-opening, seeing the way in which these local leftist politicians were inviting these people into the community. They were kowtowing to them, even as they made threats to burn and destroy our communities. And as we reached out, we had the community behind us. We had the numbers, we had the people, but not the seats in the halls of power. And even when we went out and we spoke with those who are ostensibly Republicans, whether it was our county commissioners, our state officials, state attorneys, Congress people, even Senator Rubio and Senator Scott themselves, it's just crickets all around. There's no one wanting to step in and do anything, even while these armed Antifa were right in our community, aggressively attacking people. And then it was our people who are simply trying to defend innocent civilians who ended up being targeted by local police under orders of the liberal mayor and city commission. And again, all these Republicans who said they were on our side, nothing out of them. Complete and utter turning a blind eye to it. So it made me realize that we need real patriots in there. And even if I'm not a career politician, I haven't held office before, but I figured if I could get in there in the Senate and be a voice and a platform in order to shedding light on the people who are fighting locally, like I was, and like many other people I've met traveling around the state of Florida, whether I go to Tampa, whether I go to Panhandle, South Florida, I see people who are facing the exact same situation that me and my friends did. And if I can give a voice to all these people having a national platform in the U.S. Senate and fighting from that up there, then I'll try to do it.
Yeah, beautiful community, folks, for those who don't know. Just beautiful. And very similar things even in small town Florida. I heard very similar things. A little Micanopy, a little business district, taking down the signs they had, and they're just afraid they'd be targeted by, at that time, you have to put yourself back in the right context. At that time, you have a Trump flag in your, deli, window, you may end up with a brick through it, even if you're a small town business district or you're somewhere bigger like St. Augustine. Beautiful communities just under threat. And, they've been voting the way they've been asked to vote all these years. They've been doing what they've been asked to be, to do for the party, for the politicians, for the country all of these years. But when they need somebody to do their part, it's crickets. It's nothing. There's just nothing. Well, Luis, I'd love for you to come back. Love Florida, of course, I'm sure. And it's of high interest to me. So, yeah, I'd love for you to come back. Thanks for joining us today. Before you go, tell people, I know I got it up there, but tell people where they can learn more about you and support you.
Absolutely. you can go ahead and visit luismiguelforsenate.com to learn more. And also find me on all social media with the handle Luis Miguel US.
Very smart, by the way, on Twitter. I laugh. Primarying Marco Rubio. I mean, just look, any chance you can get, you can take to put it in front of people's faces. That's a smart thing to do, to take it. Well, thanks again for joining us, Luis. We'll see you soon. Best of luck. All right, folks. If you watch this show, you know my problems with Rubio are deep. It's just he is one of those. He is one of those people who, Laura, he's like the worst of the worst. He's got like a John Roberts story where he goes in there and he says, "I'm gonna do this. I'm gonna be that guy. and then just doesn't." And you remember when I was looking, just for a partner, a politician partner to help with those veteran groups. He was supposed to be Mr. Republican veteran supporter. And it was Bill Nelson, a Democrat, who answered that call. He's just that kind of guy. Luis, serious guy, I got to tell you. Very knowledgeable.
Very serious.
Very knowledgeable.
He reminds me of like a quiet storm, I say.
Yeah. Oh, a quiet storm. Mm-hmm. I like that.
But I think if he just...
He's got the... he was answering things that I was going to answer.
Ask.
So, yes, ask. So, what he did was answer the questions that I pulled from people that teed it up, which is good. That's, it's bad for an interviewer because you're like, oh, I was just going to ask you that. But it's good because it means he's on the pulse of it, And two candidates again today, folks. It's really interesting stuff. We'll have him back. We'll talk to him again, see where it's going. Incredibly difficult to do what both these men are trying to do, but they're doing it, and that's the theme I'm trying to lead with here. I don't think a lot of these people would be doing what they were doing if it was not for the events that transpired in 2020 and even before, which is like eventually there's a build up. Everything that frustrates you frustrates other people. And, he said, I may not be a career politician. Luis, I think that's the damn problem. Mm-hmm. Marco Rubio was a career politician. Regardless of his little pretend outsider act, he was a politician. Luis put it very plainly, and he was right. In North Florida, it's the capital. It's not Southern Florida, for many people who don't seem to know that. Tallahassee is very dirty for a very long time. It's not just dirty, it's the way the game is played. It was not good. It's cleaned up some, it definitely has. I would say it's not what it used to be from years ago, but Republicans can make a good old boys club real fast, let me tell you. And that was Rubio's gig. That was Rubio's gig. And by the way, Rubio did smear other people as conspiracy theorists for 2020 when he was waiting on his mentor, Jeb Bush, to tell him to pull the trigger to deny the state's electoral votes to Al Gore. He'd have done that, no problem. John Kerry, he'd have done that, no problem. But he's a team player for everybody else. Just not for you. He'll go buck wild when Big Sugar loses their agricultural commissioner seat. And by the way, why is it also a big deal? Because, strangely, that's the office that handles gun permitting in Florida. You lose that seat, you really did lose an office that's of great importance in the state. He'll go nuts and accuse everyone under the sun of voter fraud, election fraud, not voter fraud. Election fraud is what he was really accusing. But not when it comes to a president. And not only that, some of the phone calls Marco Rubio had in the days after the election over what he really thought happened versus what he said in public versus that cheesy Twitter video that Luis mentioned. He'll call his donors, though, and say, I know, right? It's total bull what they did to Trump. Oh, well, listen, moving on. He's just one of those guys, folks. I hate to break it to you. All right, let's get back, because I did see a lot of questions about Brainerd's report. A lot of good questions about methodology and stuff, and I'll do my best to help explain that. But I was thinking too, when I saw the original question, I was considering, folks, showing you what one looks like. But do you remember the last time I tried to open up the absentee records? Do you remember what happened last time? It crashed. They're big. Literally, you will get a county by county accounting from the state in question, Adams, whatever, down the line, A through Z, and you'll get the absentee ballot records from the state. And what Matt is saying he did here is pull, those change of address flags that are on the voter file and then try to compare them with the absentee voter records. All right. And then how do we know those are the records? Well, we know because of, and this is what I want to, because when we're talking about methodology, this is important here. There has been a lot of attacks on him about the use of his full name and date of birth with the address matching, okay? And just to fight back some of the critics that went after his methodology based on this, he did cite this. But I would argue it wasn't even necessary for him to cite this, folks. This is the industry standard. Only an idiot who doesn't know the industry would level such a criticism. So I don't know what experts, PolitiFact, and what is the other one? Corruptorgy.org. What's the? I don't even know. I mean, I can't keep track of these people. Factcheck.org, right? And the rest of them. I don't know what experts they're talking about, because this is not only the industry state, it's really the only way. But in any event, the scientific basis for the validity of full name and date of birth match. And he says, an article entitled ADGN, an algorithm for record linkage using address, date of birth, gender, and name in statistics and public policy. Also authored by Professor Anselina Beher, and if I didn't get that right, my fault, states the following in his analysis of a database for the state of Texas. Either name and date of birth, or name and address, identifies nearly all individuals in the database uniquely. 99.6% are unique with date of birth and name. I want to read that again, because do you remember our good friend Jocelyn Benson in Michigan, who tried to say that we were mismatching? Like, these weren't that John Doe who lives at 123 ABC Street. It's another John Doe who lived at ABC 123 Street, or whatever it may be. With that John Doe also had the same date of birth. These fake explanations are so ludicrous, I want to read the statement again. Either, not both like what we were doing, either name and date of birth and name and address identifies nearly all individuals in a database uniquely. 99.6% are unique with date of birth and name. Folks, we used the 5 tiers. Name, date of birth, address. If you remember our analysis, we put it up on locals.com because Benson came at us like that. Or came just PolitiFact, really. Benson was just, they were trying to show for her. We used different tiers, and we, and then even the investigators looking at it, partial match, full match. The point is, our numbers were extremely conservative. Extremely conservative. I tell Laura all the time, I have no doubt we tossed names that were legitimate illegal votes, just to be on the safe side. And I can tell you from Matt's methodology, I have no doubt that the numbers he's providing are conservative numbers. You know, the sad problem is somebody like the Voter Integrity Project, Now Look at America, even stuff we did, in the end, like what Look Ahead America states in this, you have to rely on officials and law enforcement, because they're the only ones with the access to the database that databases that we really requested and needed. But that just hasn't happened at all. And he says the extremely compressed timeline to produce results for use in litigation and legislative hearings happened to us too. Hey, we're holding a hearing today. Hey, we're gonna go sue today. Is there something you can give me? We were trying to do a thorough job, not a quick job, a thorough job, and it appears they were as well, right? So, for use in litigation and legislative hearings, and for statewide officials responsible for administering elections and investigating voter fraud, increase the difficulty of the challenge, without a doubt. I mean, especially since you can't stop the phone ringing, right? Our initial results never received a fair hearing in a court of law, nor did any elected official thoroughly examine our work. However, despite providing results under the extraordinarily difficult and unique circumstances. That's sad. And yet, the media will go out and claim and say, fact check. Experts say there's no widespread evidence of voter fraud, widespread evidence of voter irregularities. Folks, that's patently false. That's patently false. What there isn't is widespread acknowledgement that it exists and the appetite to try to do something about it so we can have a healthy, robust democracy moving forward. This kind of stuff I tweeted before, and I'm, kind of leading into this. The act of censoring someone itself is a cowardly act. It's also ineffective. It won't work. But censoring somebody and trying to suppress political speech you don't like, claims you don't like, not that you can disprove. This isn't about safety or the accuracy of information. No. It is an admission that you are either too afraid or too dumb to come up with an argument to counter the one you're trying to suppress, to counter the one you're trying to censor. But it won't work. You're just going to make people more angry. Like I said on Tucker before, you think this isn't going to get out? You think people don't even know this instinctively in their bones? We need a fair and full accounting so everybody can have confidence in the credibility of our elections, in the integrity of our elections. Because if we don't, this is all over. We're all on borrowed time right now, and this is all coming to an end soon. There isn't a whole lot of history of countries that lost regime credibility and lasted and hung around a while. Everything usually goes to pot pretty quick. I don't want to end up there. I got 3 children. What about you? Got anybody you care about? The W is not worth it for me. The short-term W. Because the pendulum swings, puppies. The pendulum swings. Eventually, it will be you. By the way, Laura, I want to bring this up because itchy. Luis is yet another one, I would say. There is definitely these people that we are speaking with. And the big difference here, Laura, is that they are unafraid to use the power of the office that has been given to them to defend themselves.
Yes.
To defend themselves
Only
against people
themselves.
who constantly get in office and persecute and prosecute. Political lawfare. All sorts of lawfare. Political persecution. All sorts of political persecution. And every time Republicans have a chance to do something about it, they do nothing. They don't even protect their own voters from that persecution. Big tech, everything that's going on right now, Jim Jordan had the ability at one point to stop that. And I like Jim Jordan. I'm not trying to single him out. But Jim made the effort, in case you guys haven't read the Cernovich leak, Jim made the conscious decision not to pursue them, folks. But he'll go on Hannity and he'll scream about social media censorship. I love Devin Nunes, when it comes to trying to get to the truth about what happened with the corrupt FBI, and they are corrupt. Mm-hmm. But who voted to reauthorize FISA?
They don't put...
It's like there's no teeth.
They don't put their vote where their mouth is.
So the intelligence community is corrupt. They're spying on everybody they shouldn't be spying on. They do it to leverage people for political power, to exploit, to blackmail, to prosecute. But you vote to reauthorize their power to do so? It just doesn't make any sense.
Nope.
You remind me of those monks who beat themselves.
Oh,
You know what I'm talking about? It doesn't make any sense, and you won't catch Democrats doing it. You won't catch Democrats voting for things that cause their own demise. Their own political and cultural demise. They're not doing that. Well, Rich, they're throughout the Western. They don't care about Western civilization. They don't like Western civilization, in case you haven't been paying attention. They don't like it. And you know what Luis said? People say I'm radical for saying this. He's not radical.
No, not radical.
The Justice Department, the Civil Rights Division of the Justice Department is filled with commies. What are you talking about? Mm-hmm. I mean, anybody who criticizes him, what are you talking about? The New York Times is filled with commies. The Washington Post is filled with these are, what do we call them? Neoliberals in a lot of cases. But the neocons and neoliberals, they all have, Marxists, all have the same thing in common. They intend to use power to shape the world the way they want it. There is absolutely nothing. And the larger government, they're statists. They're all statists. There is nothing radical about that. By the way, I'm not a fan of McCarthyism at all, so don't put this the wrong way.
No.
But he was right. Joseph McCarthy was right about the State Department being corrupted by commies. He was right. And that was decades ago. The Justice Department is corrupted. It is. There's nothing radical about it. He's 100% telling the truth. And Luis is running against a guy who will do nothing to stop it.
You want to know what my favorite
he was the head of Intel for a while. He didn't do anything about anything.
Do nothing. I know. What I loved was that where he's like, of course nobody wants Cuba to be, under tyranny.
Yeah, we're all there with you.
We love you. We understand the same thing.
That was the best line of that interview for him.
But what about America? Like, his constituents
What about communism here?
Being abused.
Political persecution right here.
I mean, wake up.
I'll give Luis some free advice. Clip that moment from the interview, Luis.
Yeah.
Put that up on your website. Mm-hmm. That was it. That was a home run, dude, for a Republican primary. I'm just telling you right now. Marco Rubio's all worried about Cuba. And you know what? God bless him. We're all there with you. Mm-hmm. And by the way, I'm sure Luis would agree. We'll take as many of them that want to come here.
Yep.
As many as you want. Pack them in, baby! Mm-hmm. That's why Biden is trying to use the Coast Guard and other naval vessels to prevent them from escaping here. That's why he has his Department of Homeland Security chief going out and threatening not only them with prosecution, but Americans who help them. So if they're drowning out there, you can't stop your boat, pick them up, and bring them back. You will be arrested by Joe Biden for saving a human life. Although we're all supposed to care about the great caravans who aren't really escaping persecution. Let's cut the crap. Nobody's being persecuted in Guatemala. No one's being persecuted in Mexico. They're being persecuted in Cuba. And have been for years. But Democrats for years have attempted to prevent these people from coming to the United States. Did so in the 90s. Mm-hmm. Remember the little boy? They didn't give a damn about that little boy.
Down that float.
Should we have to go down that rabbit? Mm-hmm. Down that story again? They didn't care about him, his daddy, nobody. They'd have put him on a tube and sent him over into the 90-mile channel. That's what they tried to do. Right, Bill Clinton? Biggest mistake they ever made strategically when it comes to winning the state of Florida. That was a short-term boom for them. In the long term, look, Trump +3. I digress. But that was the spot in the interview that he should clip, because in the end, great. We're all for saving the Cuban people from communism and political persecution. What about saving the American people? What about saving your own constituents? Because in case you haven't noticed, the enemy's at the gate. Mm-hmm. The Romans used to tell themselves to tell their children to get them to go to bed at night. Hannibal is at the gate. Another great episode of Inside the Numbers. Tomorrow we'll be doing New York in a live stream, which I got cut off. I keep forgetting about the cutoff. But yeah, we'll do that. And you know what? It's more appropriate we do it with you on the live stream anyway, because the rest of the world doesn't have that PDF, and it does kind of like tease people to come and join, locals. But I'll do it with you guys, and I'll briefly mention it on Friday. On Friday, we got Matt Brainerd coming to explain this report to us. Okay? I wanted to give you guys the basic parameters of how this was done. All right? And what the definitions of it were, why he can't tell you about the votes in tranches 5, 6, and 7. It's just not possible. The government won't comply. At least in tranche 5 and 6. 7 obviously comes because you can't get the compliance for 5 and 6. All right? So without a doubt, those are conservative numbers. Mm-hmm. We will ask for the unredacted. I'm not going to share that with everybody because that's personal information. But as media, I would like, and I'm sure he will. Because, people who verify your work, the more the merrier. Right? But we'll have Matt on at 11:30. Well, just come at 11.
11:45.
11. And I think Matt's 11:45. Then we'll have Don at 12:30. Next week, we got more guests. I mean, it's just starting to pile up. Tonight, sidebar with Viva. Don't miss it. What else?
Don has Larry Elder.
Don has Larry Elder on Thursday. He also has... Hold on, guys. I got to tell you this. For the conversation, Thursday, he has Larry Elder. Don't miss Don's show, the conversation tomorrow. And then also, let me just make sure I get this right. My man, Chef Gruel, on Saturday. And it will be a different appearance than with me, but it'll be in the same show that I'm on Saturday. Andrew Gruel is my first stop the next time we go out there. We're in that area. The lockdown was killing him when we went last time, and we couldn't go see him. But Chef Andrew Gruel's place is at the top of my list on that. I mean, like, I'm getting off the plane. If it's late, I'm going to bed. I'm waking up, and the very first daytime meal I eat is going to be made by Chef Andrew. Because it's like he's my personal chef in my mind. He comes up with these things. He comes up with these things that, like, if you really wanted Rich's palate, if you were trying to cook to Rich's palate, it's him. The scallops, the lobster stuff that he comes up with. I mean, I'm going. All right, and with that, I killed myself from the thing. That was awesome. All right, anyway, be on Viva later. Don't miss Don's on Thursday. And also Don's on Saturday, which will be Chef Andrew and myself. If there's more, keep an eye on that timeline tomorrow. It looks like I'm going to try to basically do that live stream like we did last time. When the boss is asleep, when boss baby Roman allows Laura to participate, then we're going to try to make that happen. But you know how that is. So we're thinking maybe around like 12:30.
12:45.
12:45. Sorry, yeah, 12:45.
Because then I have successfully made him pass out.
Boss baby. Boss baby. You got to see him do it.
It's so cute.
You got to see him do it, guys.
I gotta record it. I'll record it.
Boss baby. He's so cute. And you're like,
We're
go,
not biased
Ro,
at
go,
all.
Ro, go, Ro, go, Ro. He's so awesome.
He's the best.
All our kids are great. They're all amazing kids.
Yeah, but he's my favorite. No, I'm
Yeah. Oh, God. Later on, Roman's going to dig that up from the archive 20 years from now. And he's going to be like, I told you Mom loves me more. Suckers. Yeah, it's funny. But sorry, Roman. Dad's here to tell you it's not true.
No, I love all my children.
Everyone's
equally.
loved equally. All right. Speaking of which, love you guys. And we'll see you in a couple hours.
Yeah.
All right.
I'm Viva Bar.
I'm not missing anything, right?
You did Sidebar. You did Larry.
Oh, heck, check it out. peoplespundit.locals.com. Thanks, guys, for watching Inside the Numbers. Deuces.
How much you wanna bet that I can get you back inside your head before the summer ends and spread a little love. Just for a little fun, I'll make you come back to me before the rise of every sun. Baby, it's meant to be, I know you got a man, but he don't understand. You're gonna be a heartbreaker. You're such a love taker. So just suck me in and you can toss me like a cigarette. 'Cause I just wanna be a bad habit, yeah. There's rhythm in our love, it's impressive, excessive. You can't make this stuff up. My chest beats, it's restless, wakes the neighbors up above. Yeah, baby, come and show me love. Baby, come and show me love. Because you're gonna be a heartbreaker. You're such a love taker. So just suck me in and you can toss me like a cigarette. 'Cause I just wanna be a bad habit, yeah.
Get on a plane and take a one-way ride. Steal us away to find a place we can hide. It wouldn't take much to spear for a night, just to give in to the need and leave it all behind.
'Cause I know that you know that I know that you want me. You told me, now show me, come blow me away. 'Cause I know that you know that I know that you want me. You told me, now show me, come blow me away. You're gonna be a heartbreaker. You're such a love taker. So just suck me in and you can toss me like a cigarette. 'Cause I just wanna be a bad habit, yeah. You're gonna be a heartbreaker. You're such a love taker. So just suck me in and you can toss me like a cigarette. 'Cause I just wanna be a bad habit, yeah. Suck me in and you can toss me like a cigarette.